welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're gonna do a backpack that has been so popular on social media. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this one. Today, we're doing the Guardian backpack from Linds Handmade. Now, as you can tell, I tried this pattern out for the first time during the holidays. I did it towards the end of 2021. I was so excited to give it a try. So I used this is the cutest little Christmas fabric. I used this neutral vinyl on the side and these awesome straps over here. This backpack is so cool and probably like the best design. Okay, so as you can see, when you look at the front of this backpack, it's a little deceiving because it's like, where's the pocket? Like, how do you get into the backpack? And that's like the whole point of it. The whole point of the Guardian is that this is a backpack you can wear and you don't really have to worry about getting pickpocketed. I love that idea. So you can see on the front, we just have this nice big empty space. So if you have a panel with some sort of words or design or images that you want to use, this is the perfect place for those bigger panels. On the sides, we have little side pockets, which I am such a big fan of. I do love a side pocket. On the top, we have this adorable little handle. So then also on the side, we have these adorable inset little strap connectors here. And that is for an optional shoulder strap, which I do suggest you do because the shoulder strap is adorable. Then we flip it around to the back where we have our backpack straps, because yes, it is a backpack. And then the actual pocket for the whole bag is back here on the back. So it goes against your back. You don't have to worry about somebody coming and taking stuff out of your bag. Inside, we just have one slip pocket, no zip pockets. So this bag is a one zip bag. I love that. You can definitely add zipper pockets to the lining if you'd like, but you don't have to. There's only one zipper. And I gotta be honest, I'm going a little zipper crazy over here, so I'm kind of happy about just one zipper on a bag. So this bag actually comes together pretty easily. Now, I wouldn't say it's a beginner bag because some of the pieces are a little challenging. These corners right here, I mean, these are not for nothing corners, right? These are some decent corners. And then the base also, the base is actually not that tricky. I would say the trickiest part of this bag, definitely not the zipper. Like, you think this is gonna be the hardest part, and I don't. I think this actually goes pretty smooth. I think it's right around here where it gets a little hairy, but as long as you take your time, you're gonna do fine. I'll walk you through the whole thing today. So let's look at what this bag looks like on. So for scale, I am 5 foot 4 inches and a size small. And so let's look at the shoulder first. So you can see this is not an adjustable shoulder strap. You can definitely make an adjustable crossbody strap if you'd like, but the bag doesn't really need to be a crossbody. So you can see the shoulder strap is perfect as is. I actually really like that. But then, you know, the coolest thing about it is that it's a backpack. So let's try on the backpack. And I like too, this pattern calls for 1.5 inch webbing. So the straps here are 1.5 inch wide, which I do really like. All right, so here, side view, look at how good that looks. That's like, backpacks can make you look kind of funny, you know? They can look like too small and it's just like a little bump on your back, or way too big and it's like you're a turtle. But this is like so chic. Look how cute that is. I love this bag. So thank you so much to Linds for allowing me to use your patterns in my tutorial. You guys know I love Linds Handmade. We all love Linds Handmade patterns, right? She is so creative. And she's so good about thinking of sewists at every level, right? From beginners to more advanced, from people using domestic machines to people using industrial machines. She really considers all of us in her pattern writing, and you can tell when you read it. It's just, she holds your hand. She also offers her own tutorials for all of her patterns, so make sure you go check out her YouTube channel. The designer herself will walk you through how to make this bag. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comment section. There will be timestamps for this bag. There's a lot going on in this bag, so we will have timestamps. They will be listed down in the description, so if you just click the little arrow, the description will expand. That's also where you'll find links for products. The timestamps will also be listed right along the bottom of this video. All right, so I know a lot of you guys have already made this backpack because the pattern's been out for a while and it's ridiculously adorable. So if you have made this backpack, let me know what you think. Let me know what you used. If you post a picture of it on social media, give me a tag. I'm at OklaRoots. I want to see your design. I have so many ideas. I do plan to revisit this bag again, maybe this year or next year, and we're going to kind of change it up just a little bit. We're not going to change up the pattern, but we're just going to change up like some fun designs we can put on the front and things like that. All right, let's get started. So to get started, you're gonna need half a yard of exterior fabric, half a yard of accent fabric, and half a yard of lining. For the exterior, I'm actually using cotton lycra. Now this is a stretchy material that's usually used for clothing, but I have so much of it that I am determined to use it in more bags. So today we're using this beautiful cotton lycra. I mean, look at those colors. I actually took my entire yard of cotton lycra and I've already interfaced it with woven interfacing. So I just took an entire yard of woven interfacing and I fused it at my heat press to a yard of my cotton lycra, and so that way this is ready to go whenever I want to use it in another bag. I know I'm not making clothes, so doing that ahead of time, if you have cotton lycra and you know you're only going to use it for bags, just have a fusing day and fuse all your woven interfacing to your cotton lycra. And then I have this fun vinyl for the accent. This is for the sides and the bottom. I think that this is, we'll see how this goes together. This is a vinyl, but it's kind of smushy. It's not very dense or very thick. And then for the lining, I'm using waterproof canvas because I don't have to interface it and it's just easier. The waterproof canvas I am using is from Wonderground Fabrics, and if you remember, this is a lighter weight waterproof canvas than the Ottertex. So if you're not comfortable working with really stiff material, I definitely suggest giving this a try. You're also going to want to use some Decoville Light. You need about a yard of that, and also a yard of woven interfacing if you're using any sort of cotton lycra, cotton canvas even, cotton woven, any sort of material that can stretch or fray. You're going to want to add the woven interfacing to it. I don't add woven interfacing to vinyl, cork, or waterproof canvas. So here is the hardware for today. First, you're going to need a 20-inch zipper. There's only one zipper in this pattern, which I am a big fan of. It is 20 inches long, it's a number 5 zipper, and then I have a zipper pull to go with it. Next, you're going to need between 2 to 4 1-inch D-rings. This just depends if you're going to add the shoulder strap or not, or if you're just going to leave it a backpack. So if you're just going to leave it a backpack, no shoulder strap, just 2 D-rings. Otherwise, you're going to need 4. You're going to need 2 1.5-inch strap adjusters and 2 1.5-inch swivels. These are for your backpack straps. And then if you are doing the shoulder strap, you're also going to want 2 1-inch D-rings. Now, I do want to make mention the shoulder strap is not adjustable. You can make it adjustable if you like. You can just add a slider on here and make the strap like we normally make like a crossbody strap. I find the size of the strap is really nice, but if you do want to make it a crossbody, you definitely can. You could also just use the D-rings and then get a pre-made bag strap and clip it on and be done. Next, I have some rivets here just to kind of hold everything together and make it look super pretty. You're also going to need at least 3 1/4 yard of webbing. Now, we're not making straps today, which I am so happy about. We're not making our backpack straps. We're not making the shoulder strap. We are just going to use webbing for all of that. I have this 16-yard roll of webbing from Tula Pink. Any type of nylon webbing is going to be great for this. So here's all the other stuff today. I'll be using Microtex 8012 needles again. In my bobbin, the thread I'm using is just this Gutermann thread. It's from Joann's. For my top thread, I'm using this Tex 45 weight thread. This is a little bit thicker for most domestic machines. It works fine in my Bernina 770, but it can be a little too heavy duty for some machines. I have had some of you guys ask as well if I use this in my bobbin. I do not. I can use the Tex 35 weight in my bobbin, but this one with my machine, it just does not work well together. Next, I have a healthy supply of clips, some small little snips, a lighter, my 1-inch by 6-inch ruler, a stiletto, which is always helpful and in my mind a must-have if you're sewing curves. For marking material, I have a chalk marker, a vinyl marker, an air erasing marker. I have my turning tool. I always have 2 types of tape. I have super sticky tape that I don't really sew over. And then I've got wash away tape. This is great for sewing over and zippers and things like that. And then of course, some Kai fabric scissors. Okay, so let's talk about these pattern pieces. This was probably the most complicated part of the whole bag, honestly, is just cutting out this pattern piece. And the way that Linds has this set out is really great because she's trying to be as efficient as possible. So I just wanted to show you guys how I did that. So let's pull out the material. So first what I did, because I have pattern placement, I did not fold my material in half and then cut out the pattern pieces at the same time. I did cut them out separately. So if you have your material laying right side up, you're going to take your pattern piece and you're just going to lay it over the material. And what you want to do is you first want, from your exterior fabric, you want to cut out this whole shape, just like it is. And then, keeping the pattern piece in place, you're going to cut around this oval here. but not the straight part. So you can see I even put a piece of tape right here to make sure this doesn't rip. Because what you want to do is after you have the outline of the whole thing cut out, then you're going to want to flip this up and trace this inner loop. And now this inner loop, this little flat piece, you see how it's a little bit longer down here? That's what you want. So that for one exterior panel, this is the back of the bag, you're gonna have this flap and this little crescent shape. And this is going to be the back pocket of your backpack. So that's one exterior combination. For the front of the bag, you're going to once again use this whole panel piece, and you're going to cut it out around the entire perimeter of it. But this time we're not gonna worry about the flap. We're just gonna cut the whole thing out. Now let me just add this back in here. You'll see when you cut this out, you have this little notch down here. So after you cut out the whole piece, you'll have something like this. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a ruler and you're going to cut right along the straight edge. So see how, let me put this back. You see how we have these little straight edges right here? You're gonna cut right along this bottom edge, and you're gonna save this and just put it to the side. So from the exterior, you're going to end up with 4 different pieces. You're going to have the outer part of the back panel, the flap for the back panel, the front panel, and this is what you're gonna see the most of, so think about pattern placement for that, but this is the front panel, and then you're gonna have this little scrap. This is everything you're gonna have for the exterior using this one pattern piece. And then for the lining, you're gonna do essentially the same thing, exactly the same thing for the back. So the flap and then the outer piece. And then for the front panel for the lining, it's the same thing except you don't need to include that little nub down here. You can actually just use your exterior front piece and trace that on your lining. You're gonna have 3 pieces for the lining. So I hope that helps. I know it's really not complicated once you got it. For me, it took me a moment to kind of wrap my head around it. But then once you do it, it's very simple. Next up, we have the side panels. I love the side panels. I don't know, the shape of this bag, I just adore it. So from the side panels, you're going to have 2 cuts of your vinyl, and then 2 cuts of your waterproof canvas, and then 2 smaller cuts of your Decoville Light. If you notice on this, there is a dashed line, and so that dashed line is your cut for your stabilizer. This just adds some firmness to the bag. Then we have the bottom base. For the bottom base, you're going to have your I think the pattern actually says exterior, but I use the accent for this because on the bottom of the bag, I do like to use a vinyl. And then you're gonna have your waterproof canvas. And then once again, using the dash lines, 2 smaller cuts of your Decoville Light. Having 2 cuts like this really helps beef up the base of the bag, which is what you want on the bottom of a bag, especially a backpack where, you know, it might be put down on the floor a lot. You want that to be as firm as possible. Next, we have a couple pockets. We have the side pockets. Love the side pockets on this backpack. So we have 2 cuts of that using the exterior material. Both of these are already interfaced with woven interfacing. And then we have an inner slip pocket. I love when we incorporate the exterior material into the lining of the bag. I think that's such a fun pop of a print, especially if you're using waterproof canvas for the lining. Most likely your lining is a solid color. And then we take our fun, bright exterior and we pop it in there. So this is gonna be a slip pocket in the lining. Okay, so next up we have our D-ring tabs. This is one big piece of the accent material. And then we have our zipper tabs. So I have 2 exterior and 2 lining. And then these last 2 pieces here, these are accents. They are optional, but if you do use them, you're gonna wanna use a cork or a vinyl because they will have raw edges left. So I wouldn't suggest any sort of fraying material for this. But we have these 2 removable shoulder strap accents. These are so cool. I can't wait to show you how these work out. I love these. And then we have this really cute little tiny piece, and this is for the little accent on the handle at the top. It's so cute, you're gonna love it. So let's get started by adding our stabilizer to our side panels and our bottom panels. For the side panels, we're going to add the Decoville Light to the exterior pieces. These are vinyl, and it's easiest with Decoville Light when you're doing it on vinyl to just use some sort of scrap material to cover this before you press it. So I like to use a high heat and a lot of steam. When doing this, you can definitely measure and try to get this perfectly centered. I just eyeball it. It's okay if you sew over it a little bit. You just don't want to sew over it a ton. And sewing over Decoville Light is perfectly fine. It's just if you have a lot of it, like if you used entire pieces of Decoville Light to cover the whole side panels, that in the seam, it gets really bulky and you just don't need it. It doesn't serve a purpose to add that kind of bulk. So I have some scrap material here. I'm just gonna cover up one of my panels, making sure it's centered. And then I'm just gonna press it down with some heat and some steam. Okay, there's one, and just always check to make sure the corners don't pop up, everything is nice and fused in place. Oh yeah, that looks great. So just repeat that with your other exterior side panel in Deco Light. So once you have those applied, you can set your side panels to the side. And then for the bottom, the base, we're actually gonna apply the Deco Light to both the lining and the exterior. So make sure you're laying your material wrong side up. Remember, waterproof canvas, if you're using it, it has kind of like a plasticky side. The other side's really soft. The back is plasticky. You don't want your iron touching the back, so let's make sure that doesn't happen. So once again, we're just going to center this either by eyeballing it or measuring, and then we'll just cover it up with our scrap material and fuse it down. Here we go, I've got it applied to the exterior. Now I'm just gonna do the same thing for the lining, especially with waterproof canvas. Make sure you cover it. And again, just high heat and a lot of steam. Okay, once you have all that fused, you can set these panels to the side. So let's start with our D-ring tab. So grab your D-ring tab accent fabric and then mark a line right along the middle of it. Now the pattern does give a tip that if you're using a thicker vinyl or anything like that, you can just cut this in half. So just use half of this and then you'll fold it once. To reduce bulk. Now I'm gonna see how bulky this is when we fold it twice, because I don't want too much bulk. I mean, that's pretty bulky, you know. I mean, we will top stitch it and stuff, but that can get pretty bulky, huh? Let me think about it. Yeah, I think I am going to take the tip, and since I'm using vinyl, I can't have raw edges on this, so I'm just gonna cut along this midpoint mark. If you're using a thinner material, don't do that. If you're using a thinner material, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your long edges and fold them wrong sides together to meet that midpoint line on both sides, and then you're gonna fold the entire unit in half like a hot dog bun and just hold it down like that. So that way you don't have any raw edges at all on the long sides. But since my material is on the thicker side, I am going to just cut right along this midpoint mark. And I'm not worried about sewing over the material if it's thicker. What I'm worried about is how it's gonna look in the end. It might just look too bulky because these are gonna go into the vinyl, the side panel vinyl. So we don't want it to look too lumpy. Okay, so I can just save this for another project. Okay, and I was saying you could just fold this in half and leave it like that and have raw edges, or what Linds actually suggests to do, grab some double-sided tape and add the tape to that center midpoint mark. And you don't have to use tape if you don't want to. You can just use clips, that will also work. And then we'll remove the paper. What we're gonna do is we're gonna fold those raw edges into that midpoint mark, just like I showed you if you're folding it more than once, but we're not going to double fold it. We're gonna leave them like this. And honestly, this is perfect because you're not gonna see it in the end anyways. And my tape's not quite wide enough. My tape's a little narrow, so I'm gonna use clips in the areas where I'm not quite reaching the tape. So you're gonna do both long edges, folding them down, wrong sides together to meet that midpoint mark. And this way you still have both long edges folded in so that there's no raw pieces of your material here. All right, once you have that folded in, now we're gonna take it to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along the two long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once you have this top stitched, you're gonna wanna mark along the strip so that it's in 4 equal parts. So just take the width of it and divide it by 4, and that will tell you how far away to make the marks. And then you're just gonna cut it down so that you have 4 little strap tabs. Now grab your 4 D-rings and you're just gonna wrap the back side, whichever side is your back side, around the flat side of your D-ring, and you can add a clip to hold it in place. Do this for all 4 of them. And once you have those prepped, go ahead and set them to the side. So now if you're adding the shoulder strap, stay with me, otherwise you can skip ahead. You're gonna grab your 2 exterior side panels and make sure you also have your template. And you'll notice on the side panel, there's this little marking here. What you're gonna wanna do is cut that out with an X-Acto knife, with scissors, something like that. You wanna be able to transfer this onto your side panels. So looking at the back of the side panels, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my template and line it up exactly on the back. And then I'm going to grab a marking tool and I'm going to mark inside that mark right there. So that's why you want to make sure you cut it. So when I remove this, I have the mark transferred over. So I'm going to do this for both of them. Here we go. So cutting this out of your material with an X-Acto knife is going to be the preferred way to do this. But since I didn't show you guys the X-Acto knife in the beginning, and I know a lot of folks don't have it, we're going to try to do it with a seam ripper and scissors. Now you can definitely do this, but you're going to want to go very slowly. So you can see I'm inserting my seam ripper at one of those corners, and extremely slowly I'm just going to cut right along that edge. And the thing is if you push too hard and you lose control, it's going to slide right off the side and you're going to have to remake the whole side panel. So try not to do that. If you have a small pair of scissors, that can help. If you have a larger pair of scissors, you can stick them in there and just use the very tip of the scissors to only go where the line is. You do not want to cut beyond it. And then same thing on the little diagonals here. I'm just going to snip right where I have it, just like that. There we go. So now I have a pretty good cut here. I'm going to repeat that with the other one. Slow is going to save you a lot of time. Going slow will save you time, I promise. Okay, so those are cut out. Now let's grab 2 of our D-rings with the straps on it. And you can remove the D-ring for now. Take one of your side panels and lay it right side up. And we're gonna thread this in through that hole with the back side up. So for me, I clearly have a back side because I have those seams showing. And I'm just going to insert this in the hole. It should be a snug fit. And I'm going to fold it up just like this. And so now I'm just gonna pull it so it's halfway down. It doesn't have to be exact, it's okay. But about halfway down. Now, don't worry about this bottom lip right here. Should it be rolled over? Should it be up? We're not worried about that just yet. We're going to deal with that in a moment. We were only going to thread this in halfway, flip it over to the wrong side, try to make sure it's straight, and we're focused on this top edge. So the top edge should have the raw edges of your Decovil Light from your cut shown just like that. And we're going to sew a row of stitching just above this cut line. So maybe 1/8 of an inch, maybe less than 1/8 of an inch, just right along this top line here, making sure you are going through all of your material. You're going through the strap tab, but you're also going through the Decovil Light and the vinyl. So not too close to the edge, just right above it. Okay, so let's take a look at this. On the back, we have the stitching just above the raw edge. If we flip it to the front, we can see the stitching on the wrong side of our D-ring strap. So now you're going to take your D-ring and insert it so that the flat side is along the back side, and then you're going to take that raw edge of your strap and you're going to fold it over and you're going to smush it into that slit. And as you do this, you're going to push down that bottom raw edge. And it might take a bit of work. It should. The tighter this is, the better. So just smush it in there. There we go. So you can see as I'm smushing this in, I'm making sure that I'm tucking down that bottom edge. And then we're going to flip it over and we're going to pull the whole side panel away. You can see I definitely did not do this halfway. That's okay. We'll do better on the next one. And with the side panel pulled away on the top and the bottom, all the way away like that, we just have the D-ring strap and then this little nub right here. We're going to sew right along that little nub just to stitch that raw edge to the strap. So if you need to check, make sure your Decovil Light didn't come undone. You need to make sure your material is also tucked in here. Okay, the pattern does suggest you use a zipper foot for that part. I do suggest that too. I was using a regular presser foot and having some problems. But once you do that, flip it down, and then you should see on the front, you have this nice little tucked in D-ring. Isn't that cute? So I'm gonna repeat that with the other one, and I am gonna walk you through it, but just at a quicker pace this time. So once again, flip the side panel right side up, insert your tab wrong side up, and then pull it down about halfway, maybe less than halfway. I pulled it down too far before. So when we fold it over, that's good. So I have it about halfway, just less than halfway. Flip it over, and we're going to stitch right above this top edge here. And then thread your D-ring on and tuck in that bottom part of your strap into the slit. It might take a little bit of work. That's okay. And then pull it down. Again, so much shorter. Okay, I should have not done that again. Oh well. So now pull the sides away, And we're gonna take this to the machine with a zipper foot and sew right along this little nub here. Make sure that whole nub and the vinyl material, whatever you're using, is all pulled out here so there's no raw edges poking through over here. All right, once you have that sewn, flip it back. Now we have both of these tucked in, and now just for some extra security and a little bit of style, we're gonna add rivets right below them. Forgot to show my rivet press in the beginning. I apologize for that, but I have one rivet press that has a hole punch on it. You don't need 2 rivet presses. I just use it a lot, so I keep it there. And then I have another rivet press that has the dies for my rivets. The rivets I'm using today are these medium rivets. They are 9mm by 8mm. So I'm gonna grab 2 sets. And it's always good to mark where you wanna put your rivets before you jump in. So ideally, my rivet's gonna go through both layers of my strap. Now you can see my strap is a little short on one side, so I'll do my best, but if it doesn't go through it entirely, that's okay. But I'm just gonna mark a dot centered right below, maybe a 1/4 inch or so, maybe 3/8 of an inch below the bottom edge of my D-ring, just like that. I'm gonna do this on both of them. And I'm gonna grab my hole punch, and I'm punching through everything. I'm punching through the strap connectors and the exterior. And again, below this slit, not above it. All right, this is pretty thick, but I think my rivets will work. Once I have that hole punched out, I'm gonna insert my rivet. And the nice thing about rivets, for the most part, is that they'll snap together, so you don't have to press it to keep it there. So isn't that cute? I think that's adorable. All right, let's do the same thing on the other one. So once you have those just snapped in place, then you grab your rivet press and just press them down. And I was a little worried that the posts on these will be too short, but they're perfect. They're perfect. You can get away with a lot with the medium-sized rivets. You don't always need the large-size rivets. Look how cute that is. I just love the way these peek out of the side panel. I gotta be honest, I like a lot of features on this bag, but this is one of my favorite. So go ahead and set these to the side for now. Now grab your 2 side pockets, and we're gonna fold these wrong sides together, short edges together, just like this. And then I like to clip along the side. If you wanna press this with an iron, you can. If you're using vinyl or cork, you definitely don't need to press it with anything. Since I'm using cotton lycra, I can also get away with not pressing it with an iron. So I'm just going to gently finger press it. So I have that woven interfacing on the back of it, so my cotton lycra isn't super stretchy like it is without it, but it still can kind of stretch on you. So you gotta be gentle. So I'm just gonna add clips along the top folded edge and also along the bottom to hold it in place. I'm gonna do this for both side pockets. Okay, and now we're gonna top stitch on the top folded edge 1/2 inch down. Once you have that top stitch, grab your side panels. Oh my goodness, look at how ridiculously cute this is gonna be. This bag is gonna be so good. You're gonna line up the bottom edge first. So the bottom edge of your pocket and the bottom edge of your side panel should be the same width. Line that up first. There we go. And then on the sides, you're gonna pull up your side pocket so that it lines up with the side of the side panel. Obviously, these are not the same sizes. So when you do that, you're gonna end up having a little bump like this, which is exactly what you want in a side pocket. So it might be easiest if you just kind of lift it up. I have to be a little careful because with cotton lycra, again, it is a bit of a temperamental material when it comes to structured bag making. Cotton lycra naturally wants to stretch and kind of warp itself around, which is why it's perfect for clothing. But in bag making, I want it to stay very structured. So I'm just gonna be gentle, kind of pulling it up. All right, how cute is that? So do the same thing with the other side panel and the pocket. Now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we can just baste along all 3 edges of both side pockets at 1/8 inch seam allowance just to hold it in place. Oh yeah, this is very cute. Okay, so these are prepped, set them to the side. Now let's prepare the grab handle that goes up top. So we're going to take a piece of webbing that is 12 inches long. And with nylon webbing, it's always a good idea to melt the raw edges because it does like to fray. So just give it a good melt. Okay, so on the back of the webbing, we're gonna find the center. So you can just fold it in half, or you can use a ruler, whichever is easiest. And again, on the back side, I'm using an air erasing marker, and I'm just gonna mark the center. And then we're gonna measure 2 inches from each side of that mark. And then we can grab some double-sided tape, and we're just gonna lay it right between these 2 marks. So it's a little 4-inch piece of double-sided tape if you just wanna cut that off first. And I probably should have used 1/2 inch wide double-sided tape because I don't think this is gonna hold it. But you wanna bring those raw edges up to meet the middle and attach to the double-sided tape. Just like this. So if it's not sticking the way you want, just grab some clips and attach clips to the side. Now this webbing is thicker than the webbing I used on my first bag. So I'm interested to see if that makes a difference, if that makes it more difficult. So both raw edges back to meet the tape between those 4-inch marks. Okay, now we're gonna take this to the machine, and with the back side facing up, we're gonna sew down one side of this center seam and then the other side because we wanna hold this in place. Now, we are gonna be covering this up, so I'm not worried about my bobbin thread showing. If you don't wanna cover this with a piece of vinyl, then just think about that now. The bobbin thread will be on the top here because we are kind of focused on the back of it. All right, that's adorable. So I made very, very wonky stitches, so I definitely need to cover this up because that is a crazy looking rectangle. So now you're gonna grab your little grab handle accent piece, and on the back you're going to mark 3/4 inch up from each of the long edges and mark it with your marking tool. Now take some double-sided tape and lay it along the very edge of the long raw edge on both long sides. All right, so once you have the tape applied, grab your strap and lay it wrong side up on the back side of your accent handle and centered. And then we'll remove the paper from the bottom edge first. And what we want to do is just fold this up so that it covers most of the back of the strap. There should just be a little bit peeking out on the top here. And then before I remove the paper on the other part, I like to fold this down just to make sure it's gonna go where I want. Okay, so it goes almost all the way down. It's about 1/4 inch from this bottom folded edge here, which is what I want. So now I can remove the paper from this. And if you were using material and you did not want this long raw edge showing, what you could do is just change the measurements of this panel so it's a little bit taller, and then you fold it down and then wrap it around. Just on one edge. You don't have to do this bottom edge because this bottom edge gets covered up. But just on the top edge, you could fold that down and then wrap it around, and that way you wouldn't have any raw edges on the long edges. So that's just something to think about. So I'm gonna remove the paper, and then I'm just gonna fold this down. I have mine, mine almost comes down to that fold. There we go. And I'm gonna look for them from the front and make sure I don't see any of that wonky top stitching I did previously. That's all looking good. Okay, so now with the tape holding everything in place, we're gonna take this to the sewing machine, and what you wanna do is you just wanna sew a nice little rectangle so that you catch all of it. So make sure when you're sewing along the edge here where this raw edge is on the back, you don't wanna sew too close to the edge because the point of this is to catch that edge. So for me, I'm probably gonna be doing about a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the entire little accent piece here. Oh yeah, that top stitching, that looks decent. I like it. So you can see I left all the tails nice and long. I am gonna pull all the tails to the back side. I did backstitch one stitch at the beginning and the end, just for extra security. I really don't want any of this coming undone. So I'm just gonna pull on these bobbin threads until I see a little loop on the back of my top stitching thread. And then I'm just gonna pull on that loop to pull the top threads to the back. I'm gonna do this for both top threads. Once I have all 4 threads in the back, I'm just going to triple knot this nice and tight, really close to the vinyl. Now I'm using pretty thick thread, so I can yank on this, but you don't want to yank so hard that you rip your threads. Now I'm going to trim those tails so that The little tails of that knot are pretty close to the knot. And then I grab a lighter, and what I do is I try to pull all the material away. So if you see, when you tie a little knot like that, you have these itty bitty little tails, and it's not even that noticeable, but you'll feel it, you'll notice it a little bit. And what I do is I just boop it, boop, with the lighter. I don't even like touch the knot. I never touch the knot that I made with the fire. I'm just booping the tails. So just very gentle, boop. All right, there we go, perfect. Well, that's adorable. And then last, grab your handle and a ruler, and you're gonna measure in 1 inch from each short edge and just mark. So with chalk pencil, that's great. An air erasing marker, depending on the material, that could erase pretty quickly. So just something that will last long enough for you to, use it. Okay, go ahead and set this to the side. Now grab your interior slip pocket, and you're gonna fold it in half, short sides together, right sides together. So we're looking at the wrong side of the material. Just clip all of this together. So you're going to clip along all the raw edges, the sides as well, all the way down to the fold. On the bottom long edge, leave yourself a 3-inch opening. And we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along the sides and the bottom at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Like I said, leaving this unstitched, and make sure you backstitch right here at these marks and also backstitch up here at these corners. Once you have these stitched together, go ahead and clip down the corners. So you're cutting closer to the stitching, but you're not cutting the actual thread. We just want to make it easier to get those nice sharp corners. Sometimes along the corners I'll also cut a little slit that's parallel to that little diagonal corner cut, just like that. And now let's turn this right side out. You can see I got my pressing equipment out because we are going to give this a press. Even though cotton lacquer doesn't press as crisply as cotton woven does, you can still press it. So to really help with those corners, I have my turning tool here. I'm just going to poke those out. All right, once you have that poked out, try to get it into a rectangular shape. Mine always end up a little wonky, but you know what? That doesn't even bother me. Now I'm going to press it to just try to get it into the most rectangular shape possible. But again, this is a lining pocket, and I think a little wonkiness makes it a little bit more fun. Okay, arrange your pocket so if you have a directional print, this is the front right here. You can see I do have a directional print, and as cool as that would be too, it's upside down. Oh, it's such a pretty fabric, isn't it? I'm going to use this side as the front of the pocket. And now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch right along this top folded edge at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. The hole is down here on the bottom, so that's not the top of the pocket. Just top stitch right there. So you can see from my top stitching, I once again left the tails long. You can back stitch a couple times. I'm finding that doing this tail thing though just makes it a little bit neater. So once again, on the sides here, I'm pulling on the bobbin thread, and I'm using my stiletto to pull the top thread back. Here we go. I'm going to do this on both sides. Over here on the right side, the thread has kind of knotted itself inside the material, so I don't even need to tie that because it's already knotted. If I can't pull the thread back, I highly doubt any use is going to disturb that. But over here on the left side, I have the long tail, so I'm just going to triple knot that. And I'm going to cut those tails down. And you don't have to burn these because this will be stitched down. This is not something you're probably going to notice at any point, but if you want to, very, very carefully, you boop it. Remember, we boop it. We're not burning it, we're booping it. That's what we do now. Okay, now this is optional, but Linds has it in there, so I'm going to do it. She has us mark 2 like pen pockets. So from the left side, you're going to measure in 1 3/4 inch and mark with a chalk marker. Yes, I'm using a white chalk marker on white material. I can still kind of see it. I think it'll be okay. And then from that 1 3/4 inch mark, you're going to mark another that is 1 3/4 inch from this side. That just gives you a couple pen pockets. You don't have to do that. You can leave this as a nice big slip pocket if you prefer, but I think that's fun. I carry a lot of pens around, so I use it. Now you're going to grab your lining front panel. You only have one of these, and you're going to lay it right side up. Ideally, we would have done this at the beginning, but you're going to want to mark midpoints on the top and bottom of pretty much all of your main panels. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So we're just going to fold along the bottom edge, pull it, and clip right at that corner. And do the same thing for the top edge. All right, remember that these panels, they do have a top and a bottom. The top is more narrow than the bottom. The bottom's a little wider. And now you might want to mark the midpoint on the bottom of your pocket as well. And you're going to want to mark it on the front of the pocket. So you can just fold it, pull it. I will mark it with an air erasing marker. Here we go. And then you're going to measure 1.5 inches up from this midpoint on the bottom of your lining. And then you can center your midpoint mark on the bottom of your pocket on that. There we go. So now this should be pretty centered. It's not the end of the world if it's a little crooked. I'm actually going to grab some tape and tape this down, just so I don't have to worry about this falling apart on the way to the sewing machine. Okay, so now we're just going to sew this onto the lining. We're going to go at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the sides, the bottom, all the way up. Make sure you backstitch well at the top and the bottom. And then you can also just stitch right over those 2 pen pocket lines. Again, backstitch at the top and the bottom, or leave the tails long and then tie them in the back, whichever you prefer. But this needs to be secure. You're going to be using this a lot. Alrighty, we've got this attached. Now, I don't know if you noticed when I was sewing this, but cotton lycra, even with the woven interfacing, it still has some stretch to it. So we'll see if that helps or hurts us when we're doing the zippers. And my pocket's a little crooked, isn't it? That's what it is. It's fine. Go ahead and set this to the side. So now we're going to work on the main zipper. Grab your zipper tape, your zipper pull, and your zipper tabs. First thing, of course, you're going to want to attach your zipper pull. Now grab one of the zipper tab lining pieces and lay it right side up, and lay your zipper on top right side up, matching up those short edges. Grab some clips and use that if it's helpful. And then take one of your exterior zipper tabs and lay that right side down on that same edge, and just line up all 3 of these units. So I like to add clips right at the edge, and then I add them a little bit further down as well, just to hold it in place when I'm sewing that. Okay, so do the same thing on the other side, lining right side up, zipper right side up, matching up the short raw edges, exterior right side down. All right, now sew along both of these short edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once those are stitched in place, pull the lining and the exterior so that they are wrong sides together, and just line them up. I like to line them up on the short raw edges first, and then kind of tug along both of them. And what we want to do is we want to get them nice and fitted around the zipper. There we go, do this for both sides. All right, now we're going to top stitch right along these zipper tabs at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now when this is completed, this should be about 30 inches long. So now take your zipper, we're going to fold the whole unit in half, and I like to line up the zipper tabs where that seam is to help me line it up, and then we're going to mark the midpoint on the zipper tape. So do that with whatever tools you like. So now grab your main zipper panel exterior piece, and we want to find the midpoint on the top and the bottom of this as well. So let's just fold it in half, and I will mark the midpoints with scissors. Okay, so take the zipper panel and lay it right side up, and grab your zipper, and we're going to lay the zipper right side down, and when the zipper is closed, it should be going towards the left, just like that. And we're going to find our midpoint on our zipper and line that up with the midpoint on the top of our panel and clip together. I like to clip there in the middle, and then I also add a couple clips around it real quick. There we go. Now, keeping the zipper right side down, we're going to take these short edges of our zipper tabs. Probably should have basted those together. And we're going to line them up with the bottom straight edge of our zipper panel and clip together. You're going to want to use a lot of clips on this. Okay, there's that. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Just make sure this doesn't get twisted around. So always pay attention that your zipper and the tabs are exterior right side down. And once you have the bottom edge clipped in place, we're going to clip along the entire side. So just going up. So I like to kind of clip the easiest parts first. So the straight edge down here on the bottom, the slight angle going up towards the top, and then I'll leave that corner for last. So I'm going to do the other side as well. So you might find this easiest if you open up your zipper. So you're only working with one side of the zipper tape that way. Let's clip that down here. Okay, what I like to do at this point is I flip it over, so I'm looking at the wrong side, and then I make the exterior panel kind of like a bowl, and I just kind of push it in, keeping my zipper tape pretty straight. And then I'll just smush in these corners. Like I said, you just think of it as like forming a little clay pot, little clay bowl, where the lip comes up like that. I'll be honest, these curves are not some of the hardest we've done. These are pretty forgiving curves. Linds has a way with doing curves so that you don't hate them. You actually like making them. She's very clever. All right, so I'm just going along and adding any extra clips where it might be helpful. I especially want to pay attention down here where my zipper tabs are, since I didn't baste them together. I don't want them to separate, and then I end up just sewing like the lining on, but not the exterior. So I'm adding extra clips down there. So here, all right. Well, I'm just gonna say it again, it looks adorable. So now we're gonna go baste this in place. So using your zipper foot and 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're just going to baste this whole thing in place. I like to do it with the exterior right side up and the zipper wrong side up. So I'm looking at the back of my zipper tape, not the back of my exterior. Go slowly. I don't pre-clip my zipper because I don't always need to clip it. So I keep the scissors next to me, and if I'm coming up on this corner here and my material is just shifting, you know, my exterior is going one way, my zipper's going another way, and I'm just smushing it and I can't get it to work together, you just put the tiniest little clip right along the edge of your zipper tape, not your exterior, but your zipper tape, and that's gonna allow the zipper tape to spread out a little bit more so it's easier to sew around that curve. A stiletto is also gonna be really helpful here. So far so good. Now we're gonna grab our lining zipper panel and again, mark your midpoints, top and bottom. Something honestly we should have done at the beginning. I'm sure Linds told us to do at the beginning, but I always forget. Now, take your lining panel and you're gonna lay it right side down. And I like to line up the midpoints first on the top. And then down here on the bottom corners, once again, line those up. And then just clip the entire lining panel together with the exterior panel. These should be the exact same size. Now you kind of have to smush that zipper out of the way up here at the curvy corners. All right, once you have these clipped together, we're gonna sew along the clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, or as close as you can get to the zipper. Make sure you're aware of where the zipper pull is and move it out of the way. And just again, go slow around these curves. It shouldn't be too bad since the zipper's already basted, but it can still fight you. We have it sewn together. It doesn't advise us to clip into this, so I'm gonna leave it and just turn the panel right side out and we'll see how it looks. And if we feel like we need to clip into it, we will. Turning this right side out should be pretty easy. The biggest thing I'm focused on right now is to make sure I didn't sew over my zipper teeth. So they all look pretty good. I'll close up that zipper. Oh, look how cute that is. That's so pretty. It's so pretty. So the edges and everything look pretty good. I mean, I don't think I need to clip into them. So now what we want to do is we want to top stitch around this, which can be a little tricky depending on the material you're using. And honestly, it's tricky no matter what. It's a curve. Top stitching on these curves is always a little tricky. So I'm going to try to flatten out the bottom a bit. And then I'm also going to flatten out the sides. And you can press this with an iron if you'd like, but I just kind of pull on the zipper like that. There we go. And I'm going to use my zipper foot still, and I'm going to top stitch along this front panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. The hard thing is that ideally I want to top stitch with this curve just like this. See how it's bowed down? But I can't do that out of my sewing machine, which means I have to top stitch it like this, more of a bowl. Keeping the zipper open should help with that. So let's take this to the sewing machine and top stitch along the entire exterior front flap at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'll be honest, that is some of my most decent top stitching. I usually go all kinds of wonky on these curves, so that looks pretty nice. Oh, this bag is gonna be so good. Now grab the back main panel exterior and let's find the midpoint. I'm gonna find the midpoint on this top straight edge and also on this bottom curved edge. So for the bottom curved edge, I'm not going to clip it. I'm going to instead mark it with a marking tool. So you can see, in the end, this is how it's gonna look. Isn't that beautiful? So smart. So what we wanna do is just lay this outer panel right side up, lay the flap panel right side up, kind of get an idea of how it's gonna look. Then we're gonna flip this whole flap up. And what we wanna do is we wanna attach the bottom midpoint mark of our raw zipper edge with that midpoint mark on the curved part of our exterior panel, right sides together. So zipper and exterior fabric are right sides together. Like I said, I like to clip the midpoint first and then clip just outside of it on both sides so none of it twists around. So this is what you have. And then you're gonna take these short edges and you're just gonna flip them up. So again, everything is right sides together and we're gonna match up the short edges with the bottom short edges of our zipper tabs. And once again, see how everything's kind of like, where do I go? Like this? No, not like that. You're gonna keep this rounded up, right? And then attach this exterior of zipper tab to exterior of back panel, right sides together. There we go. And then, once you have that clipped, you should have everything, nothing's twisted, everything's great. And then we just clip along the edges, just like we did with the flap. I'm gonna start with the straight parts first and save the best for last. All the way up. Okay. So now we're gonna flip this so the material for the flap is right side up. We're gonna baste along this clipped edge all the way around at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just do your best here. You might find it easier to unzip this flap and kind of fold it out of the way as you go around this edge over here. You want to add a lot of clips right now though, because this is so thin and my material naturally is stretchy. You can end up just stretching this out in all kinds of awful ways. You do not want any of this to move. It has to stay where it is like this. So that's where stiletto comes in. And if that means you kind of have to push the material closer to the needle to keep so that it stays over here, then do that. You don't want to get to the end of this and then this panel over here is like 1 inch further down, right? That's no good. So go slow, baste it on, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Looking so cute. Now grab your remaining back panel lining and we're gonna flip our flap over so we're looking at the right side of the lining on the flap, just like this. And then remember, don't get distracted by this flap. I know I just did. You can even pull it out of the way if you'd like. We're working on this edge of the zipper, okay? So if you haven't already marked the midpoint on the top and the bottom, the curved bottom right here, go ahead and do that. And what you can do is you can take your lining and lay it right side up over like this. Because remember, if this is how it's going to look. So I have my back panel I've already attached wrong side up. I have my lining right side up. And what I want to do is I want to flip the right side of my lining down to match up this bottom edge of my lining with the midpoint mark marked on my zipper tape. So right side of lining to wrong side of zipper tape, matching up the midpoint mark like this. Clip that in place, and then again, clip just outside of it. And then what you can do is just flip this left flap over. So again, right side down. And I'm gonna bring it down here so it's right side of the lining flap to the right side of this zipper tab, and match up those bottom corners and clip together. And then same thing on the right side. I'm gonna pull this here and I'm flipping it. So I'm not just pulling it down like this, I'm flipping it. So I'm looking at the back of my waterproof canvas. So I know there's a lot of edges here, and you're not attaching any of the straight edges right now. So right side of this material to the right side of that zipper tab, matching up that bottom corner. There we go. And now, once you have middle and the ends clipped down, you should be able to kind of see it better on how it's gonna go. We're just gonna clip up along these straight edges. And then once we get to the top, again, kind of bowling. I think I'm making like a little bowl. I know it starts to get a little confusing now about like which part is like the inner curve, which part is the outer curve. Just clip it together. The basting part is usually the hardest part. Once you have it basted on, sewing it together is pretty easy. Okay, so now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and pinch everything right sides together. So I'm gonna sew it with the back of the lining side up. Reason being, the lining is not attached. I know the exterior and the zipper are already attached, so this is the material I'm most concerned about. I have to keep my eyes on it to make sure it doesn't slip out of the way and then I end up not stitching it in place. So that's why I do it with the lining side up for this step. We're gonna sew it on at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. There we go. So let's flip the material so that the exterior and the lining are wrong sides together. And you might get a little worried right now, like, wait, this doesn't look right. You're good. You should be good. You should be good. Okay, so I'm just gonna, so to get a proper look, here, let's do this. Take your exterior and your lining and pull them wrong sides together, and let's match up these corners first and these long straight edges. Because this is just looking too good not to take a minute and admire it. You know what I mean? You should always stop and really admire the hard work you're doing. All right, now we're gonna go along the side and do the same thing. Let's pull these back on the zipper tabs, pull those wrong sides together, and clip that corner. And then just go up the whole side. It might become easier if you close the zipper. Oh, it looks so good. So these edges, they want to fight you. So I am just smushing it down flat, especially since I'm using this cotton lycra. I have so much stretchability here that it wants to go every which way. So I'm doing my best to just keep it as flat as possible around these curves. Okay, so it's a little wonky looking. It's a lot wonky looking, but that's okay. We're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along this outer edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. Go nice and slow. If you're worried that your top stitching is going to look bad, just use a thread color that's around the same color as your material. Okay, let's take a look at this. I mean, that top stitching is pretty good. I gotta be honest. It's looking pretty good. Now, I know instinctively you want to base down these straight edges. Don't do it. We're not doing that. Now let's measure up 1.5 inch from these bottom edges here. And I'm gonna make a mark to make it easier for me to do this next part. So 1.5 inch from both outer exterior edges, and then take one of your D-rings, and we're going to clip it along the exterior material, not the lining. So maybe you even want to pull the lining out of the way. We're going to clip it to the exterior material only at about a 45-degree angle pointing up. It doesn't have to be terribly precise. Just clip it to that exterior material so that it's angled pointing up towards the center of your bag. And we're gonna baste these on to the exterior fabric only. Do not sew it to the lining. Pull the lining out of the way. Just baste these on at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now you're gonna grab your backpack straps, and at the top of each strap, you're gonna cut them at an angle, and we want them mirrored. So just make sure if your straps have a certain design, like a front and the back, you think about that, because they're gonna be mirrored from one another. So then grab your front main panel, and let's once again find the midpoints on the top and the bottom. Now lay your front panel right side up and grab your backpack straps. Now let's measure 3 inches in from the sides of the front panel and make a mark with some sort of a fabric marking tool. Do this on both sides. Take one of your backpack straps, and it should be angled kind of towards the center. And the inner edge of your strap should be coming up to that mark. So our straps are going to the outside of the mark. And then just clip it along the top edge. Do the same thing with your other strap, except this one will be going up towards the center, towards the right this time. Okay, now let's take this to the machine and baste along these top edges just to hold these straps in place. Okay, so now take your front main panel and lay it right side up. I know we've got a lot of stuff going on. Try to get these out of the way. If you need to kind of roll them up, go ahead and do that. So lay your front panel right side up and flat, and then grab your back panel and you're gonna lay that right side down, exterior right side down to the exterior right side panel. Ooh, there's a lot going on. And we are going to just focus along this top edge first. So if you have midpoint marks, you might want to match those up and then go out towards the corners and then just clip along this entire top straight edge. Okay, now let's sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now once you have these sewn together, ideally you're going to press this seam open. You might find that easiest to do by using some double-sided tape. I think I'm just gonna finger press the cotton lycra material because I'm not too concerned about that. But if you needed to, you could always add some double-sided tape to the back of these raw edges and then push them down. So now we're going to attach the lining the same way. Okay, so let's flip this around so we're looking at the right side of the lining. There we go. And then grab your lining front panel and we're gonna lay them right sides together. And we're gonna sew along this top edge. And now let's sew along that edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, and then for the lining, the same thing. We might want to actually add double-sided tape for this. Actually, lining, I might be able to press this. Let's get the iron out. So first things first, let's press this cotton lycra open as best we can. So I'm going to press it from the front as well, and I have my seam open, so that's good. Okay, there's that. So now I'm going to do the same thing with the waterproof canvas. Except on waterproof canvas, we don't really want to press it from the back, so we're going to try to just press it from the front. So I'm pulling the exterior out of the way, and I'm going to finger press the waterproof canvas seam so that it's open, and I'm going to do it in sections. So I press that, and I can feel that that's open, and I'm just going to press it from the front. And the nice thing about waterproof canvas is that since it's sticky on the back, once it heats up, it might stick to itself. So I'm just going to go along this, and I'm just finger pressing on the back side and then pressing it from the front and then heating it up to try to get that back to melt together. And that way I just don't have to use more tape. All right, so if I take a look on the back, yeah, it's pretty good. It's for the most part pressed open. That should be good. So now, take your lining panels and lay them open, and then take your exterior and lay it open. So you have the back panel on one side, the front panel on the other side. And just do your best to make sure the seams are lined up. So we're working on these top seams. So I'm going to kind of line them up on the bottom and top with some clips. Again, checking to make sure those seams are open. And just feel inside to do your best The reason we want the seams open is because we want this top to be really, really flat. It's just gonna make attaching the handle easier if this is flat. All right, so you can see my straps are on the back panel side, and then here's my front panel over here. I almost forgot about my bag tag. Don't let me forget to add that. I'm probably gonna add that more towards the bottom of the front panel, but I'll do that in a future step. Hopefully I'll remember. Now grab your top strap handle and center it with the seam on the top of the bag and clip in place. And you'll notice your top handle is longer than it needs to be. Obviously that's what we want because we want the handle to kind of pop up a little bit like that. And we're clipping it to both the lining and the exterior. Now when we do this, we should be able to push down on the handle, and it's going to cover where the backpack straps come out. And when we're done, just this one top handle part is gonna be poking up, not this whole thing. So you might find it easier to use some tape here. So I'm gonna apply a little piece of tape to the back of my handle. I'm using the really sticky tape. And then keeping it all lined up, I'm gonna gently push this down. There we go. So now that's stuck down over my backpack strap. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side of the handle. And then just push this down so it covers the backpack strap. Okay, so now we're gonna make a little box and an X, and it's gonna go from this 1-inch mark right here on the edge of our strap all the way to the edge of our backpack strap. And so I'm gonna use an air erasing marker to help mark this. And I'm just gonna make some lines here. I'm gonna go from this edge to that edge. I'm gonna use a small ruler to help me figure this out. So just a diagonal line from corner to corner. And again, this is an air erasing marker, so it will erase. This will actually erase pretty quick on this strap. So I've gotta be fast. And now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch on these X's. So we're gonna top stitch on the X and also on these shorter mark lines as well as along the edges, just to really hold this down. That's looking great. Look how cute that is. I love that. So before I move on, I am going to attach my bag tag. And I'm going to attach it towards the bottom here. So I know we have a 3/8 inch seam allowance when we attach the base, and so I don't want to sew it through that. And I'm going to sew it about 1.5 inches above the bottom edge of the front panel. I'm just going to center it just like that. And I'm just gonna go quickly top stitch around all 4 edges of this at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm only going through the exterior, not the lining. So once again, you can see I left the tails nice and long, so I'm gonna pull the bobbin thread and get those tails to the back of the material. And then just like we've been doing, I'm gonna triple knot that and then cut it down. All right, there we go. The front and the back are all done. Now we just have to put it all together. So let's take our front back panel and lay it just like this so that the back is over here on my right and the front is over here on my left. And now we're going to attach the side panels to their associated front and back panels. So the side panel for the exterior is only going to be attached to the exterior. The side panel for the lining is only going to be attached to the lining. So try to remember that as we go. If you haven't already, mark the midpoint on the top edge and the bottom edge of your side panels. So now take your exterior side panel and lay it right side down. And if you need to, push that D-ring down. You're gonna lay it right side down at the seam between the front and back exteriors. And line up that midpoint with that seam. Now you can see I'm pulling this up and away from the lining. I'm not clipping this to the lining. Okay, so once you have these midpoints matched up, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna sew 1 inch right here. So it's a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and we're just gonna sew a 1 inch wide line connecting the exteriors together. So again, push that lining out of the way. And this is just gonna help hold this in place so that we can easily sew the sides. Okay, once you have that sewn, just reorganize everything. And now that we have that little 1-inch piece up there, you see how it just kind of holds it in place so we don't have to fight with it when we do the next step. So take the corner of your front panel and pull that up right sides together with the associated corner with the side panel. And just clip those together, right sides together. And then just clip up the side all the way to the top. And then towards this top curvy area, again, I just kind of push it in like a bowl and then connect it all the way up to that 1-inch bit that we sewed. Do the same thing on the other side. The other side's a little bit trickier because the lining is attached to the back. So you need to make sure you pull them up, exteriors right sides together, but then you push the lining out of the way because we're not sewing the lining at all right now. All right, so now we're going to sew along these clipped edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, whichever way is easiest for you, honestly. You might want to sew it with the side panel, wrong side up, and you don't need to re-sew over the 1-inch mark. You can if you want, but Linds in the pattern does suggest that it's easiest on both sides if you start at the bottom and then go up to the 1-inch mark, and then on the other side start at the bottom and go up to the 1-inch mark. Whichever one's easier for you. I definitely think on this side here that's attached to the back panel, you're going to want to sew it like this so that you can see the lining and make sure you don't accidentally include it in the seam. Okay, so before I even flip it out, I know I've got a problem. I've got some major pleating here, and I think that's honestly because I was sewing from the back of the side panel. I cannot do that. I have to be sewing from the back of the exterior panels or else the pleating is severe. So I'm just gonna flip this out real quick and take a look at where I need to make some fixes. Yeah, so you can see I have major pleating right here, which is where I'm going to fix it. I have a little tiny pucker right here. I'm not going to touch that because I think that is fine. So I'm just going to go back real quick and I'm going to unpick this area, smooth it out, and then restitch it. And really, that's just because I couldn't see what I was doing. Since this exterior material was on the bottom, the feed dogs are pushing it and I don't know what it's doing, and it just pinched it. But luckily, these are usually pretty easy fixes. Okay, so I have it fixed a bit. I'm gonna go take this back and just sew right over the area that I had to unpick. So I sew a little bit before it, a little bit after, and I backstitch well so I don't have to worry about any of the seams coming undone. So I still have a little bit of pinches, but sometimes it looks worse on the back than it does on the front. So let's go ahead and flip this around and take a look. Yeah, and the front, it's fine. Like, I can see the little pinches, but I don't think, especially since I'm using this cotton lycra naturally is going to kind of mush itself around. I think that looks perfectly fine. So let's do the same thing on the other side. So it's getting a little bit harder because we can't lay it as flat anymore. So on the remaining exterior side, lay it right side up. Take your remaining side panel, lay that right side down. Match up the top midpoint mark with the seam connecting the front and the back. Get those lined up. And I think I'm only going to sew this one at about like a 1/2 inch. I'm just going to sew just a little tiny bit right up here because too much I feel like was working against me. So I'm just going to sew a tiny bit right up here at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Again, pushing the lining out of the way. I know these straps, my straps are kind of heavy, so it's getting a little exhausting taking this back and forth. So just like before, we're going to line up these bottom corners, clip up the side, do the same thing on the other side. Once again, just remembering to keep the lining out of the way. All right, now we're gonna go sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once again, I'm going to sew it so I'm looking at the back of the exterior front and the exterior back panels. And I'm just pretty much gonna go all the way around this time. The cotton lycra was going so well, but it was giving me some trouble here. So let's just take a look. Sometimes, like I said, it looks worse on the back than it does on the front. Both sides have small pleats. I'm okay with that. You can see right here, you see how it's not super smooth. It's a little frumpy. Honestly, I don't even think that's something that I will notice after a little while. So let's just admire our work for a moment. Isn't that just so stinking cute? All right, so now pretty much all we have to do is, we got to do the lining now. That's right, we got to do the lining and then the bottom. So mark the midpoints on the top and the bottom of your lining panels. So once you have those midpoint marks, we're going to attach it the same way to the lining. So somehow lay your bag so that the lining is right side up, and then take your side lining panel and lay it right sides together, matching up the top midpoint mark of the side panel with the seam between the front and the back. And since this is the side panel, I'm not that worried about it being perfect, so I'm not going to do the little pre-stitching up there. I'm just going to sew it all on at the same time. So I do the top edge, and then I'll clip up along one side. Okay, so now let's take this to the sewing machine. Don't stress out about this part. It's okay if this is a mess, and we're going to just sew along the entire edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I have a ton of pleats up here on that curve in the lining. That is fine. It is the lining, and especially it's the lining at the top of the bag. No one's going to see that. I will forget about it. I've already forgotten about it. So now grab your remaining lining panel and lay it right sides together with that top, which way is right side? With the top seam of your lining. Again, remember we're only sewing lining to lining right now. And then clip along the corners on the bottom and then also along the edges. Again, no reason to take a ton of time on this or stress too much about it. As long as it's sewn together, it's gonna be great. All right, now let's sew along that edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so that was definitely the hardest. It would have been easier if I would have done what Linds suggested and just sew the top piece first and then sew the sides, but I didn't pay the price. Okay, so now let's turn the whole thing right side out. Well, I mean, it's definitely worth the trouble. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous bag. Look how pretty that is. So now we want to line up the bottom edges of the exterior and the bottom edges of the lining. And the lining and the exterior are wrong sides together. I find it easiest to do all of the midpoints first, if you have them all. And then line up the side seams and just push your lining seam in the opposite direction of your exterior seam. You're probably not going to be able to push your exterior seam anywhere because that's got a lot of layers. So just push the lining in the opposite direction to help reduce the bulk. And then once you have the major points clipped together, just add some clips around the bottom edge so that everything stays put. All right, now let's baste along this bottom edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's basted, go ahead and set this to the side. Now grab your last remaining pieces, the two bottom pieces, and let's quickly find the midpoints along the long edges and also along the short edges. So then take your exterior and your lining and lay them wrong sides together and just clip them together. And let's baste around all of these edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now take your bag and flip it so that it's wrong side out, or lining side out. You're going to want to make sure you open your zipper as well. There we go. So now we're just going to take the base and we're going to lay it right sides together with the right side of the exterior, so that lining is right side out, exterior is right side inside. You understand. So the long edges of the base go against the front and the back panels, and the short edges go against the side panels. So use those midpoint marks to help you line this all up. And depending on the material you're using, you might have to use quite a bit of clips, because this could be very structured if you used a lot of vinyl. And with this base, I'm going to tuck it in again like a bowl. The base is going to get tucked in. And then I keep the exterior sides, front and back, as straight as possible. All right, now let's go sew along this bottom edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. It's going to be a little tricky. Looks like Linds sews it kind of standing up like this. You might find it easier if you use a zipper foot, so that way you can really get in here without having to flatten out the bag too much. You could try, I think either way it's going to be tricky, so I'm going to try to sew it with the exterior lining on top. All right, there we go. I gotta be honest, my arm is killing me. Let's flip it out real quick and just take a look to make sure there's nothing crazy going on that we need to fix. If there's a couple pinches here or there, I'm okay with that. Let's just take a quick look. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Pinches on the base, honestly, are totally fine. But this looks really, really good. So I'm gonna flip it back out. Looking at the lining side, because the last step of the bag construction is just attaching binding to this. So before we prep the binding, if you have any of these kind of jagged edges here where one panel is way off of the other one, just trim it down. It looks fine in the end, but we do need them the same width for the binding, or else that's just going to be difficult to attach. Okay, for the binding, I forgot to show this in the beginning, you're going to take a piece of waterproof canvas, and it's 1 inch wide by the length of the width of your waterproof canvas. And all we do, I don't even tuck in the short edges. I just take the binding and I wrap it around the raw edges here on the bottom, so that the wrong side of the binding is going against the raw edges. And you see when you do this, it becomes like invisible. I have recently become a big fan of binding because it makes it a little bit easier to just cover up these raw edges, and it adds a really nice structure to bags. We've said before, it's kind of like the bones of the bag. Like if you've seen corsets or wedding dresses and they have boning in them, it's kind of like that in a bag. And then if you used a thread color that was the same color as your material, honestly, you won't even notice this at all in the bag. As you can see, I'm just clipping around the whole thing. I'm not worried about pleating or overlapping on the corners. That's fine. Once I get to where I started, I cut my binding down so that it overhangs about 1 inch or so. We just want to make sure it covers it. And then I wrap it around just like that. There we go. And now we just have to sew this on. And pretty much what I do is I just sew about 1/4 of an inch away from the folded edge, all the way around, or halfway through as well. The biggest thing here is you want to make sure you catch the edge on both sides. So it's better to have a little more hanging out than you need. right, that's the last of the construction sewing. So let's flip it out. Take a look at all of our hard work. Oh yeah, this is adorable, isn't it? Here's the thing I love about cotton lycra. Cotton lycra can be kind of tricky, but it doesn't really wrinkle. So when you get done with the bag, you don't really have to worry about pressing it or anything. It's just gonna look nice. Oh my goodness, that is a beautiful bag, isn't it? All right, so now all we have to do is finish the straps. So first let's do the backpack straps. So for that, you're going to need your 1.5 inch sliders and your 1.5 inch swivel hooks. What we're gonna do is we're going to make sure the backpack strap is straight, and we're just going to put it up one side of the slider over that middle bar and out the other side, just like that. And then we'll take one of our swivel hooks and swivel on the top side. So if you need to, check it with your slider, just like that. And then take the raw edge down here that's left over. Give yourself a nice big slack area over the middle bar on your slider. Insert the raw edge underneath this slack and over that middle bar. There we go. And you can give yourself an inch overhang, a 1/2 inch overhang. It really just depends on how you're going to enclose this. If you're going to sew right here, you want to give yourself about an inch or so you have a nice big space to sew a rectangle with an X. If you're going to rivet it, you really, 3/4 of an inch. An inch is still good, but with rivets, we can get a little bit closer. We don't need as much slack. So I am going to use rivets to hold this in place. So for now, I'm just clipping it. And you can see, this is how the backpack strap looks. And then you can just clip it to your D-ring down here. And there you go. That's one strap. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now let's rivet these. So now I'm just going to mark 2 dots. I'm not that particular about placement of them. The one thing you want to remember, so if you look here when I'm pinching it, I have 3 layers. 2 of the strap and then the little nub. I don't want this far right layer. We're not riveting through that, because if we do, we can't actually move the strap and adjust it. So we only want the little fold over edge and then the piece right behind it. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this and mark 2 dots. And then I'm going to grab my hole punch, and I'm just going to hole punch, like I said, through those 2 layers, not through 3 layers. All right, once those are punched, I'm going to grab my rivets and just insert them, and I can just snap them closed. Rivets are great. It just makes some of these processes a lot quicker. Okay, so now I'm just going to repeat that for the other strap. Okay, so now I have the rivets hole punched and snapped in, and now all I have to do is press them, and there we go. We can just clip on our backpack strap, and the backpack is completely done. Now, if you're not doing the shoulder strap, then you are done. Otherwise, let's make that really, really cute shoulder strap. So you're going to grab your removable shoulder strap accent pieces and your strap, which is 24 inches long. And since I did just cut this strap, I'm going to melt the edges. You can see nylon is meltable. So you want to melt them or else it'll fray a lot. And now I love these little strap connectors. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab these little connectors and your swivel hooks. You're going to thread the connector into your swivel hook and then just wrap it around the end like that. And then all we do is just wrap it around the edge of our strap. Isn't that cute? So I'm going to use some clips here, but really what we're going to do is we're going to glue this and then we're going to sew it. So do this for both ends. Just thread the connector through the swivel, wrap it around, and then we're going to place it right on here. All right, so I'm just using this Beacon 3-in-1 glue because that's what I have. So this is what I do. Let's open this up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add glue to the back of the bottom part of my strap accent. So I'm just going to put a bunch of glue on here. Not so much that it's seeping out the sides, okay? You don't need it to seep out the sides. There we go, there's that. So then I'm just gonna lay my strap centered over that. And it doesn't have to come all the way down to your swivel hook. And it shouldn't, because the strap is 1.5 inches wide, and this area right here where your swivel is, that's only 1 inch wide. If you push it all the way down, then the edges are gonna peek out, and you don't want that. You just wanna make sure it's centered. And once you're happy with that, add add some glue to the top of the strap, but don't add it further up than where the accent is. So keep it kind of low. We're gonna stitch this as well. The glue just helps to make it extra protected, so you know it doesn't come undone, and it also keeps it in place. So this one, we're gonna try to make sure we line it all up really, really well. There we go. And this is what it looks like on the front and the back. It's a simple thing, but it has a big impact. Okay, and now I'm also gonna add clips. If you prefer, you could use something like these hair clips. These hair clips are nice because you can get pretty close to the edge, and you don't have to worry about them leaving little clip marks on them. And there we go. And now we're just gonna let that dry, and then we'll stitch it down. So let's repeat that for the other side. So we'll just walk through that together. So once again, I have my accent wrong side up. The swivel hook's already attached. I'm gonna add some glue to the back, but not so much that it's gonna come out the sides. There we go. And then I'm just gonna add my strap over that and center it on the accent piece. Looking good. And then I'll add more glue to the top of my strap, but only where the accent piece goes, not farther. And then I'll just wrap this around. Easy peasy. There we go. Now we'll add the clips on the sides. And I also like to add one right along the bottom here by the swivel hook. Okay, now let's just let those dry. So once your glue is dry, all we have to do now is top stitch around this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I recommend you go very slow, and I do recommend you use a zipper foot because we do want to get pretty close to this D-ring. You don't have to get, right next to it, but you want to get close enough to it. And we're just going to go around all of the edges, the little small angles as well, at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I know sometimes that can be a little tricky to keep everything straight. Use a thread color that matches your material if that's easier. But again, a zipper foot is going to be helpful for this. There we go. It's all stitched on. Now you can definitely do like an X here if you'd like. You can do a whole design. You can get very creative with this. So you might have noticed I did backstitch just a tiny bit, and I also left the tails long. And so I am going to see if I can pull those top threads to the back using the bobbin threads. Like I said before, if you're pulling and pulling and pulling on these bobbin threads and those top threads are just not coming back, then just trim them. If you can't get those threads to kind of unravel, then it's unlikely it'll happen over the course of time while it's being used. But I was able to get all 4 threads back, so I'm going to triple knot this again, and I'm tying it really close to the vinyl because I kind of want the knot to like get, mushed into the vinyl. You could also pull these tails through one of the sides here and knot it so that it's inside between the 2 layers of vinyl. That's another option. All right, and then I'm going to trim down the tails. And then I'm going to grab my lighter, and what I do is I pinch all the material back, so all I see are these like little tail nubs. Grab my lighter, and then I just, whoop. I'm not touching the knot at all. I'm only like just getting close to the tails. There we go. And then you can just kind of smush it down, and look how cute that is. So I'm going to do that with the other one as well. So once you have the tails cleaned up, you might find you need to clean up the sides a little bit. So even though we cut it perfectly, we glued it, these could be a little uneven. If you have that, then just grab your scissors and just kind of very carefully just slice down the side just to clean it up. Don't worry about these angles right here. I honestly just don't even stress about that. I think this feature is really cool. And so you'll notice we do have raw edges here on our vinyl. Now, if you want to get really creative, you can grab some edge coat, and you can edge coat these edges to have that like plasticky coated finish that's so professional. You can definitely do that. If you decide to do that and you haven't done this part yet, I would suggest you edge coat right here, these top little bits by the swivel hook on their own first. and also edge coat these bottom edges down here on their own first. So that way when you do edge coat it later, you just have to do the sides, because it can be a little difficult to edge coat this piece here without getting the paint on the strap. But now that that's done, all we have to do is snap this onto our bag. And oh my goodness, look at this bag. Okay, let's try it on. This might be one of the prettiest things I've ever made. I mean, look at this. Oh, does that not just scream spring? I mean, the first backpack I made was for Christmas time. This is for the springtime. Look at how beautiful that turned out. Look at that detail. Look at those beautiful sides with that pink sparkly vinyl. Oh, I just love this so much. And here's the thing. We use cotton lycra here. I think for the most part that really worked in our favor, because I do think with cotton lycra you can get away with some little pleats and stuff and you don't really see it. So I am just loving how this turned out. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what it looks like on. Final test. So here's the shoulder strap. Again, I love the size of this shoulder strap. I mean, definitely adjust it based on, you know, your body size. But for me and my height, this is like the perfect size for a shoulder strap. And now let's look at the backpack feature. Oh yeah, okay, these hot pink straps, right? These are so cute. And then look at that. Oh, that's so cute, isn't it? You guys, I just noticed this whole time I've had a bunch of stuff falling down over here. Oh no. Okay, I went ahead and fixed that. Oh man, what a day, what a day. Well, this was so much fun to make. I hope you guys love making this bag as much as I do. And the thing about this bag is that I feel like it is an enjoyable bag to make. You have some challenges, which is always nice to be able to kind of like flex your bag making muscles a little bit. You learn a lot, but in the end, you make probably your new favorite bag. Like this is probably your new favorite bag, especially for travel, especially for, I don't know, moms. Like this would be a great diaper bag. I love this. And it's like a blank canvas on the inside. So we do have that one slip pocket, but if you want to add some mesh pockets so that you can have like some baby bottles in there, if you want to add a zip pocket, you can definitely do it. You have a lot of freedom here. The pattern's not going to like say, this is exactly how you have to cover every single square inch of the lining. You can get away with a lot here. And I absolutely love that. I think this bag would also be, again, I just have diaper bags. It's springtime and I just always think about diaper bags in the springtime. But if you embroidered your name on here or your child's name, like how beautiful would that be, especially as a diaper bag? I know when I was pregnant with my first child, I was so into anything where I could put a monogram on it. So this would be a perfect bag for that, a beautiful embroidered monogram. You could use your Cricut, some heat transfer. I mean, I can't stop thinking of things. You can do so much with this. I love this bag. So thank you, as always, to Linds. You know how much I love you. Your patterns are amazing. Once again, make sure you check out her channel. She's going to walk you through everything. If you haven't seen, she has a new pattern out that is absolutely amazing. We will get to it, I promise. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.